Thank you for being with us today. What we're going to do is we're going to do a video on School Finance 101. It's a repeat of information that I've shared with the community several times over the past 8 years. And what it does is it describes how does school funding work. So to begin with, we have 5 different funds that are used in school funding. The first one is the general fund. We also have our capital projects fund, our transportation fund, our bus replacement fund, and our debt service fund. These are the 5 funds from which we work for school financing. What we're going to talk about is what do each of these funds do and what are they used to pay for and how does the revenue come into each one. So to start with, we'll start with the general fund. It's the one that is actually the most complicated and it is the one that has the most amount of money in it. None of the money or the revenue that comes into this bucket comes from local property taxes. All of it comes from state resources, whether it be sales tax, income tax, or any other tax or fees that the state charges. They use that money then to redistribute to the schools through a school funding formula. That is done every 2 years by the Indiana General Assembly, and it is the Indiana General Assembly that determines how much funding we get to support our kids. 92% of the revenue in this bucket is used for salaries, wages, and benefits, with more than 3/4 of that being used for teachers, and even a greater, and then another amount used for teacher assistants, our nurses, our guidance counselors, our school psychologists, occupational therapists, principals, secretaries, custodians, basically anyone who works with kids or supports those who work directly with kids. That is what the general fund is. It also takes care of consumable supplies like paper and pen and chalk, as well as library books, magazines, and softwares. It also takes care of legal fees and business insurance and our utilities. Our utilities being things like electricity, natural gas, water, sewage, telecommunications, and trash removal. Not only is there utilities that come out of the general fund, there are some that comes out of the capital projects fund. The capital projects fund is our first property tax fund. It is paid for with your local property taxes. And even though it's a local property tax fund, the General Assembly at the state level still determines how much money the school board has at its disposal to take care of the issues that are paid for out of this fund. There is a little bit of the utilities. That amount was capped in 2005 and has remained constant and been the same for each of the past 13 years. So any increases or changes that come in our utilities come out of the general fund, which is where the vast majority of our utilities come from, which is why we put in an energy savings program to try to reduce our energy costs so that we protect this fund to pay for teachers. In addition to that small amount of utilities that come out of the capital projects fund, it's a building maintenance fund. It pays for the roof repairs, our HVAC, plumbing, parking lots, sidewalks, and those things. It does also pay for equipment and technology. Copy machines, LCD projectors, the microscopes used in science labs, as well as snow removal and lawn equipment. And then the big one is the computers. As the state requires us to become more and more digital, more and more money must be expended in the infrastructure for computers and the computers themselves. Those are all come out of the capital projects fund. Even though it's a local property tax fund, the state determines how much we get. We also have our transportation and our bus replacement fund. These are also local property tax funds that are also determined at the state level and are capped at the state level. So even though these 3 funds are locally paid, it's the state that determines how much goes into these 3 buckets. The transportation fund is pretty much what it says. It's to pay for transportation operations cost. It goes for the bus drivers themselves. It's the only personnel group that's not part of the general fund. It is also for the fuel, the oil filters, the transmission fluids, the brakes, the tires, and so forth to help keep our buses running, as well as the mechanics who keep them in good repair. The bus replacement fund is exactly what it sounds like. It is to replace buses, which we do on a 12-year cycle. Again, that is dictated by state law. The last fund of our local property taxes is the debt service fund. And it is the only one of these funds that is determined at the local level. The debt service fund, to put it in layman's terms, is like a mortgage. It is used to pay for any new construction, as well as any substantial repairs and maintenance that we do to buildings that cannot be covered out of the capital projects fund because of the extent of the cost. So this is where we would do a major renovation to a building, which we did a few years ago at Carroll High School, as well as new construction like we did at Cedar Canyon and Eel River Elementary Schools. So those are our different funds. Now, the thing that you also must remember, each bucket is a standalone bucket. None of the gray buckets can be used for any purpose but what it's designated for. So capital projects can only be used for capital projects. Transportation operations can only be used to operate our buses. Bus replacements can only be used to replace buses, and debt service can only be used to pay back the mortgage. The general fund is the only one with any flexibility. But anytime we take money out of the general fund to put in one of these other buckets, it takes away from those who work with our kids. 92% of this is for people who work with our kids or support those who work with our kids. So every time we take money out of this bucket, we are affecting the people who are working with your children. That is why we want to protect this one. And even though it comes from the state of Indiana, it's something that we need to make sure that we protect and keep working with our kids. That concludes our School Finance 101. If you have more information, please contact us at our central office at 637-3155. Thank you and have a great day.